Have you ever felt like the weight of someone else's mistakes was placed squarely on your shoulders? Like no matter how hard you tried, you were always the one to blame? That's the story of my childhood. My name is Emily Harper, and at 27, I've spent most of my life trying to escape the role my family cast me in, the eternal scapegoat. Growing up in Denver, Colorado, in a cozy suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and the distant hum of the Rockies, I never imagined I'd one day walk away from everything I knew. But the seeds of that decision were planted long ago, in the quiet moments of blame that shaped me. This is where my story begins, not with a dramatic exit, but with the slow, aching realization that love, in my family, came with a price I could never pay. I was 6 years old the first time I felt that hollow sting of being blamed for something I didn't do. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the air smells of fallen leaves and possibility. My older brother Liam was chasing our younger sister, Chloe, through the living room of our two-story home in Denver's Park Hill. Their laughter was wild, carefree, until it was interrupted by a crash that stopped time. My mother's prized porcelain music box, a family heirloom passed down from her grandmother, lay shattered on the hardwood floor. I was in the kitchen, coloring a picture of a sunflower with my crayons, lost in my own world. But when my parents rushed in, their faces tight with anger, Liam pointed at me without hesitation. "Emily did it," he said, his voice steady, his eyes daring me to contradict him. I froze, my small hand clutching a yellow crayon, my heart pounding. "I didn't," I whispered, but my voice was too soft, too uncertain. My father, David, didn't even look at me. "Emily, you know better than to be so careless," he said, his tone final. My mother, Laura, sighed and began sweeping up the pieces, muttering about how I always caused trouble. I sat there, my sunflower unfinished, feeling a strange ache in my chest, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong spot. That moment wasn't just a single event, it was the blueprint for my childhood. The Harper family to the outside world was picture perfect. My father ran Harper's Hearth, a beloved bakery downtown known for its sourdough and cinnamon rolls that drew lines out the door. My mother worked part-time as a librarian, her warm smile greeting patrons at the Denver Public Library. Liam was the star of his middle school soccer team. Chloe was the darling of her ballet recitals, and I was the quiet one, the one who tried to make everyone happy. Our home, with its white picket fence and blooming lilac bushes, looked like it belonged on a postcard. But inside, there was a rhythm to our dysfunction, a pattern where every misstep, every frustration found its way to me. By the time I was 10, I'd learned to anticipate the blame. If Liam forgot his homework, it was because I'd been too loud practicing my piano in the next room. If Chloe spilled juice on the couch, it was because I'd distracted her by asking about her day. If my father had a rough day at the bakery, maybe a batch of bread burned or a customer complained, he'd come home and snap at me for leaving a book on the coffee table. "Why do you always have to make everything about you?" my mother would say, her words sharp enough to cut through my defenses. I'd swallow the hurt, my throat tight, and retreat to my room, where I'd pull out my journal. That journal became my sanctuary. In its pages, I wrote about the music box, the spilled juice, the burned bread, not to accuse, but to understand. Why was it always me? What was I doing wrong? I filled pages with questions, my handwriting shaky, as if the act of writing could unravel the knot in my heart. But the blame wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was subtle, woven into the fabric of our daily life. I remember my 10th birthday, a day I'd been dreaming about for weeks. I'd begged for a small party, nothing fancy, just cake and a few friends from school. But Liam had a soccer game that afternoon, and by the time my parents returned home, exhausted and focused on his performance, they'd forgotten my request. "Emily, don't make a fuss," my mother said when I let a tear slip. "Birthdays aren't that big a deal?" I nodded, forcing a smile, and spent the evening in my room, eating a leftover cupcake from the bakery, while my family watched a movie downstairs. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Maybe if I'm quieter, they'll love me more." School became my refuge. My 4th grade teacher, Miss Rivera, noticed my knack for storytelling during a class project. "Emily, you have a gift," she said, her eyes kind, her voice steady in a way my parents never was. She encouraged me to join the school play, and I landed the role of Dorothy in our production of The Wizard of Oz. Rehearsals were my escape, a place where I could be someone else, someone whose choices mattered. The night of the performance, I scanned the audience for my family, my heart sinking when I saw only empty seats where they'd promised to be. Afterward, Miss Rivera hugged me, her pride brighter than the stage lights. "You were incredible," she said. I clung to her words, tucking them into my journal like a treasure. They were proof that someone saw me, not as a problem, but as a person. As I grew older, the blame grew heavier, more insidious. By middle school, I was juggling advanced classes, the debate team, and volunteer work at a local animal shelter, desperate to prove I was more than the family's punching bag. I'd stay up late studying, my desk lamp casting shadows on my journal, where I'd scribble affirmations, "I am enough." But at home, my efforts were invisible. When I brought home a perfect report card, my father glanced at it and said, "Don't get cocky. Liam's working hard for his scholarship." When I won a debate tournament, my mother sighed. "That's nice, but could you help Chloe with her homework? She's struggling because you're always so busy." The message was clear. My achievements didn't matter unless they served someone else. The emotional toll was quiet but relentless. I'd lie awake at night, replaying my mother's words, my father's silences, my siblings' quick accusations. I started to believe I was the problem, that if I could just be better, smarter, quieter, more helpful, they'd see me. But no matter how high I climbed, the blame followed. It was like trying to outrun a shadow that stretched longer with every step. My journal pages filled with questions that had no answers. Why don't they love me the way they love each other? What if I'm broken? Yet, beneath the hurt, a spark of resilience flickered. Miss Rivera's encouragement, my small victories at school, the stories I wrote in my journal, they kept me going. I began to dream of a future where I could define myself, not as the scapegoat, but as Emily Harper, whoever she might be. At 13, I wrote in my journal, "One day, I'll find a place where I belong. One day, I won't be afraid to shine." That dream, fragile but fierce, planted the first seeds of the courage I'd need years later, when a single moment would change everything. If you've ever been blamed for things you didn't do, if you've ever felt invisible in the place you're supposed to call home, know this: you're not alone. My childhood in Denver taught me that love can hurt, that family can wound, but it also taught me to hold on to the parts of myself that no one could take away. This is the beginning of my story, a story of breaking free, of finding strength in the quiet moments, of learning that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. Stick with me, because after years of carrying my family's blame, I finally walked away, and what happened next changed everything. Picture a family so charming, so polished, that neighbors whisper about their luck. A father whose bakery fills the streets with the scent of fresh bread. A mother whose laughter echoes through community events. Kids who shine in sports, dance, and school, their smiles bright enough to light up a room. From the outside, my family, the Harpers of Denver, Colorado was that family. We were the postcard of suburban success, living in a craftsman-style home in Park Hill, where lilac bushes bloomed each spring and the Rockies loomed like silent guardians in the distance. But step inside our front door, and the illusion crumbled. Behind the perfect facade, I, Emily Harper, was drowning in a sea of blame. My every move scrutinized, my every breath a reason for someone else's frustration. This is the story of a family that looked flawless from afar, but taught me that love can be a mirror that distorts more than it reflects. Growing up, I envied the way strangers saw us. My father, David Harper, was a local legend. His bakery, Harper's Hearth, wasn't just a business, it was a Denver institution. On weekends, families lined up for his cinnamon rolls, their sticky sweetness a staple at church brunches and school fundraisers. Customers adored his easy grin, the way he'd toss a free cookie to a kid with a shy smile. My mother, Laura, was the heart of the library, her part-time role as a librarian making her a fixture at story hours and book clubs. She had a knack for remembering names, for making people feel seen. My brother, Liam, was the high school soccer star, his trophies lining our mantle, his charm winning over coaches and classmates alike. Chloe, my younger sister, was the family's darling, her ballet recitals drawing gasps from audiences who saw her as a future star. And me? I was the straight-A student, the debate team captain, the girl who volunteered at the animal shelter. Together, we were the Harpers untouchable, enviable, perfect. But perfection is a fragile thing, and ours was built on a foundation of secrets and scapegoating. Inside our home, the warmth that strangers saw was reserved for everyone but me. The pattern that began in childhood when Liam blamed me for breaking my mother's porcelain music box at 6 had grown sharper, more relentless by my teenage years. If Liam's grades slipped, it was because my piano practice was too distracting. Never mind that he spent hours gaming in his room. If Chloe forgot her ballet shoes, it was because I hadn't reminded her, as if her schedule was my responsibility. When the family budget tightened one month, my dance classes, my one outlet, where I could lose myself in movement, were singled out as the problem. "Emily, those lessons are a luxury we can't afford," my father said, his voice heavy with accusation, conveniently ignoring Liam's new soccer cleats or Chloe's private dance tutor. I'd nod, my throat tight, and quietly withdraw from the studio, the music fading from my life like a song cut short. The blame wasn't just about money or mistakes, it was personal, a constant reminder that I was the family's flaw. My father's bad days at the bakery became my fault. If a customer complained or an order went wrong, he'd come home, his jaw set, and find something to criticize. "Emily, why is your backpack on the couch?" He'd snap, as if my presence was the root of his stress. My mother's favorite refrain: "Why do you always make everything about you?" cut deeper each time she said it, especially when I dared to defend myself. Once, when I was 15, I tried to explain that I hadn't touched the vase Chloe knocked over during a tantrum. "Stop being so dramatic," Laura said, her eyes cold. "You're always stirring up trouble." I retreated to my room, my journal open, my pen trembling as I wrote. "I'm not dramatic. I'm not trouble. Why can't they see me?" School was my lifeline, a place where I could breathe. My debate coach, Miss Rivera, saw something in me that my family didn't. "Emily, you have a voice that can change minds," she told me during my sophomore year, her words a lifeline I clung to. She pushed me to apply to Yale, a dream that felt both impossible and inevitable. I poured myself into my studies, earning a 4.0 GPA, leading the debate team to nationals, and volunteering at the shelter, where the dog's unconditional love soothed the ache my family left. But even these victories were tainted at home. When I shared my debate win over dinner, my father scoffed. "That's nice, but Liam's got a big game this weekend. We're all focused on that." My mother nodded, adding, "And Chloe's recital is coming up. You know how nervous she gets." I swallowed my pride, my journal capturing the moment. "I won today, but it doesn't matter. I'm invisible unless I'm to blame." One memory stands out, sharp and painful, from a family vacation to Aspen when I was 16. We'd rented a cabin, the kind with a stone fireplace and views of snow-capped peaks. It was supposed to be a bonding trip, a chance to reconnect. I'd spent weeks planning activity-shiking trails, a board game night, even a stargazing evening inspired by a library book I'd read. But on the first day, a mix-up with the cabin booking left us with one less bedroom than expected. Before I could explain that I'd double-checked the reservation, Liam chimed in. "Emily probably messed it up. She's always trying to take charge." My father's face darkened. "Can't you do anything right?" he said, his voice low but cutting. My mother sighed. "Let's not ruin the trip, Emily." I stood there, the mountain air cold against my skin, feeling smaller than the peaks around me. That night, under the stars I'd hoped we'd share, I wrote in my journal. "I planned this for them, but I'm the one who's wrong. Always." The emotional weight of those years was like carrying a backpack full of stones. Each blame, each dismissal, added another, until I could barely stand straight. I'd lie awake at night, replaying conversations, searching for the moment I'd failed, convinced that if I could just be better, they'd love me. My journal became my confidant, its pages filled with questions. What if I'm not enough? Why does their love feel like punishment? But even as I doubted myself, a quiet strength grew. Miss Rivera's belief in me, the dogs at the shelter who greeted me with wagging tails, the stories I wrote in secret, they reminded me that I was more than the scapegoat. At 17 I wrote, "One day, I'll find a place where my light doesn't have to dim." Looking back, I see how the Harper family's perfection was a carefully crafted illusion, one that required me to play the villain so everyone else could shine. It's a role I didn't choose but learned to endure, hoping that love would eventually outweigh blame. If you've ever felt trapped in a family that sparkles for others but dims your own light, you know this pain. You know the longing to be seen, not as the problem, but as a person. My teenage years in Denver taught me that facades can hide deep wounds, but they also taught me to hold on to the pieces of myself that no one could break. This is the second chapter of my story, a story of carrying blame I didn't earn and dreaming of a day when I could finally be free. Stay with me, because the moment that changed everything was closer than I knew. Have you ever chased something so fiercely love, acceptance, a place to belong that you lost pieces of yourself along the way? For me, Emily Harper, that chase defined my life well into my 20s. Growing up in Denver, Colorado, I was the family scapegoat, blamed for every misstep, every tension in our seemingly perfect Park Hill home. But I didn't just accept that role, I fought against it, believing that if I could be good enough, smart enough, helpful enough, my family would finally see me. From high school triumphs to Yale University and back to Denver, I poured my heart into winning their love, only to find that the cost was higher than I ever imagined. This is the story of my relentless pursuit of family approval, the moments of hope that kept me going, and the quiet realization that love shouldn't demand your soul. By my senior year of high school, I was a master at proving my worth. In Denver, where the Rockies stood like silent witnesses to my struggle, I balanced a 4.0 GPA, captained the debate team, and volunteered at the local animal shelter, where the dogs wagging tails offered the affection my family withheld. My debate coach, Miss Rivera, saw potential in me that felt like a lifeline. "Emily, Yale would be lucky to have you," she said, her voice steady with belief. Yale. The word alone sparked a fire in me, a dream of a place where I could redefine myself, free from the weight of blame. I spent nights studying under my desk lamp, my journal open beside me, its pages filled with affirmations. I am enough. I will make them proud. When the acceptance letter arrived, with a substantial scholarship, I clutched it like a ticket to freedom. I imagined sharing the news at dinner, picturing my parents' faces lighting up, my siblings clapping me on the back. But reality was colder than a Colorado winter. That night, I set the table with care, my hands trembling with anticipation. My father, David, was distracted, muttering about bakery expenses. My mother, Laura, was focused on Chloe's upcoming ballet recital. Liam was texting under the table, likely about soccer. I cleared my throat, the letter hidden in my lap. "I got into Yale," I said, my voice brighter than I felt. "With a scholarship?" The silence was deafening. My father glanced up, his brow furrowed. "Yale? That's expensive, Emily. Liam's college fund is already stretched thin." My mother sighed. "It's great, honey. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to be practical." Chloe rolled her eyes. "Always showing off," she muttered. I felt my heart shrink, the letter crumpling in my hands. Later in my journal I wrote, "I thought this would change everything. Why doesn't it?" The dismissal stung, but I held on to Miss Rivera's words, convincing myself that Yale would be my chance to rewrite the story. At Yale in New Haven, Connecticut, I blossomed in ways I hadn't thought possible. The campus, with its ivy-covered buildings and bustling courtyards, felt like a world where I could breathe. I majored in communications, drawn to the power of words to shape narratives. I found friends Sarah Nguyen, with her infectious laugh, and Malik Carter, whose quiet wisdom grounded me, who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. For the first time, I wasn't the scapegoat. I joined the photography club, capturing New Haven's autumn leaves and candid student moments, each click of the shutter a step towards seeing myself clearly. My photos, pinned to my dorm wall, were a gallery of moments where I felt free, but the shadow of my family lingered. Phone calls home were a tightrope walk. "Ever since you left, Chloe's been acting out," my mother would say, her tone implying my absence was the cause. "Liam's stressed about school," my father added, as if my success at Yale somehow burdened them. I'd hang up, my dorm room closing in, and write in my journal, "I'm 2,000 miles away, but I'm still to blame." One memory from my sophomore year stands out, a moment when I tried to bridge the gap. I'd spent weeks planning a family game night for their visit to New Haven, hoping a light-hearted evening of Monopoly and snacks could mend our fractured bond. I bought their favorite snacks from Denver, a bag of Harper's Hearth cookies for my father, kettle corn for my mother, gummy bears for Chloe and Liam. I set up the game board in my dorm's common room, my heart racing with hope. But when they arrived, the mood was tense. Liam complained about the drive. Chloe whined about missing a dance rehearsal, and my parents bickered about parking. Halfway through the game, Chloe knocked over the board in frustration, scattering pieces. "This is stupid, Emily," she snapped. "You always make things complicated." My father nodded. "Let's just go to dinner. This isn't working." As they left, I gathered the scattered pieces, my journal entry that night raw. I wanted to give them joy. Why does it always turn to blame? After graduating with honors, I faced a choice. Stay in Connecticut, where job offers from media firms beckoned, or return to Denver, where my family waited. Part of me wanted to stay, to build a life with Sarah and Malik, to keep photographing the world through my lens. But another part, the part that still believed I could change my family's view of me, pulled me back. I took a job at a digital media startup in Denver, renting a small apartment 15 minutes from my parents' house. I told myself proximity would help, that weekly dinners would show them I was more than the scapegoat. But the pattern resumed as if I'd never left. My job, which I loved for its creativity, was dismissed by my father. "Digital media? Sounds like you're selling smoke," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. When I shared a campaign I'd led, my mother changed the subject to Liam's new coaching gig. My journal filled with familiar questions. Why do I keep trying? What am I proving? The cost of seeking their love was steep. I sacrificed time with friends, sidelining Sarah and Malik's invitations to visit. I poured energy into family dinners, crafting menus to please everyone, only to leave feeling drained. My photography, once a passion, gathered dust as I focused on being the good daughter. Worst of all, I lost confidence in my own worth. Each rejection, each blame, chipped away at the woman I'd become at Yale. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling of my Denver apartment, wondering if I'd ever be enough. My journal became a mirror of my doubt. I'm trying so hard, but it's never enough. What if they're right about me? Yet, even in the darkest moments, hope flickered. My boss at the startup, Rachel, praised my work, echoing Miss Rivera's belief in me. The dogs at the shelter, where I still volunteered, greeted me with joy, reminding me of unconditional love. In my journal, I wrote, "I'm not broken. I'm just in the wrong story." That realization, fragile but growing, hinted at a truth I wasn't ready to face. Love shouldn't cost your identity. My years chasing family approval taught me resilience, but they also showed me the danger of giving too much to those who give too little back. If you've ever poured your heart into pleasing someone who couldn't see you, you know this ache. You know the exhaustion of running toward a finish line that keeps moving. My journey in Denver and Yale taught me that seeking love can be a beautiful act, but it can also blind you to your own worth. This is the third chapter of my story, a story of longing, loss, and the courage to question what love should be. Stay with me, because the moment that broke my heart open was just around the corner. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air shift, heavy with unspoken judgment, as if you were already guilty before you spoke? That's what happened to me, Emily Harper, one spring evening in Denver, Colorado, when a single-family meeting shattered the fragile hope I'd clung to for 27 years. I'd spent my life chasing my family's love, believing that if I tried hard enough, I could escape my role as their scapegoat. From my childhood in our Park Hill home to my years at Yale and back to Denver, I'd poured myself into proving my worth, only to find blame waiting at every turn. But nothing prepared me for the moment when my entire family, parents, siblings, and extended relatives united to declare me the architect of their downfall. This is the story of that night, the betrayal that broke my heart, and the quiet strength that carried me out the door, forever changed. The trouble began months earlier, though I didn't see it coming. My father, David, ran Harper's Hearth, a Denver bakery that had been a community staple for decades. But by my mid-20s, the business was struggling. Big box stores and online competitors were eating into profits, and my father's mood grew darker with each passing month. I'd returned to Denver after Yale, working at a digital media startup, still hoping to mend our family's fractured dynamic. When David mentioned the bakery's declining sales during a tense family dinner, I saw a chance to help. I could revamp your website, run some ad campaigns, I offered, my voice cautious but eager. Free of charge. My father's shoulders softened, a rare flicker of gratitude in his eyes. That'd be a start, Emily, he said. I dove in, spending evenings and weekends building a sleek new website, launching social media accounts, and crafting targeted ads to draw younger customers. I even arranged a local photographer to showcase the bakery's artisan breads. Sales ticked up slightly, and for a moment I dared to hope I was finally contributing something they valued. But beneath the surface, a deeper crisis was brewing. One Sunday, over coffee at the bakery, my mother, Laura, confided that David had taken out a massive loan 2 years earlier to renovate the shop. The payments are crushing us, she admitted, her voice trembling. Your father barely sleeps. My heart sank. I could look at the finances, I said, drawing on my experience managing budgets at work. Maybe I can help. Laura's eyes lit up with relief, but that relief should have been a warning. The bakery's books were a mess, multiple high-interest loans, maxed out credit lines, and cash flow so tight it was a miracle they were still open. I suggested downsizing the storage space and holding a clearance sale, but David bristled. I've run this place since you were in diapers, he snapped. Don't act like you know better. Still, desperation forced him to act. They rented out part of the storage and ran a small sale, but the real bombshell came when the bank demanded a cosigner for a refinancing loan due to David's overextended credit. Liam was buried in student debt. Chloe had just bought a condo with her fiancé, and Laura's credit was tied to the bakery. That left me, with my stable job and solid credit score, as the only option. It's just a formality, David assured me, his tone softer than usual. The bakery will cover every payment. I hesitated. Every financial advisor would scream against co-signing for a failing business, especially a family one. But the alternative was watching Harper's Hearth collapse, taking my family's legacy with it. After a sleepless night and a call with my therapist, Dr. Ellis, I agreed, but with conditions. Full access to the accounts, approval over major decisions, and monthly reviews. David signed the agreement, though his tight jaw told me he resented it. The loan was approved, and for a few months, things stabilized. My campaigns gained traction, and the lower payments eased the strain. Then I noticed irregularities, large cash withdrawals with no receipts, no vendor invoices. When I raised it at a meeting, David grew evasive. Standard business draws, he said, waving me off. Don't micromanage me, Emily. I should have pushed harder, but years of conditioning taught me to back down. The truth unraveled 2 weeks later. My mother called, frantic, saying the bakery's account was nearly empty. A vendor payment had bounced, and David was missing. I raced to their house, finding Laura pale at the kitchen table, Liam and Chloe already there, their faces a mix of anger and fear. Where's Dad? I asked. Gambling, Liam spat. He's been at the casino for months. Some guy showed up here demanding money. My stomach dropped. Gambling? The withdrawals, the evasiveness, it all clicked. David returned the next day, shame in his eyes, admitting he'd gambled away over $120,000, including most of the loan I'd co-signed. I coordinated with their accountant, met with the bank, tried to salvage what I could. David promised to get help, but the family dinners grew tense, undercurrents of blame swirling like a storm. Then came the text from Laura. Family meeting tomorrow, 6 p.m. Everyone's coming. Be there. The formality was odd, her usual warmth replaced by cold urgency. I texted back, Is everything okay? Her reply, Just be there. My gut churned. I'd seen that tone before, in moments when blame was about to land. That day, I met with Dr. Ellis, practicing breathing exercises, steeling myself for what was coming. Pulling into my parents' driveway at 6 p.m. I saw cars lining the street. Liam's truck, Chloe's sedan, my grandparents' old Cadillac, my Aunt Susan's SUV. This wasn't a meeting. It was an ambush. Inside, the living room was packed. David and Laura sat on the couch, faces grim. Liam and Chloe flanked them, eyes hard. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins filled every seat, their stares pinning me as I stood in the doorway. There she is, David said, his voice flat. Now we can start. Start what? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Laura looked away. We need to talk about the bakery, Emily. The mess you caused, Liam said, his words sharp. I blinked, confusion giving way to dread. The mess I caused? David stood, his face reddening. Your fancy website. Your ads, they drove our customers away. 30 years of loyalty, gone because you had to show off. My Aunt Susan nodded. My book club stopped going. They said the bakery felt too upscale, too different. I clutched my folder of financial reports, my lifeline. The data shows sales increasing, I said, my voice rising. We've gained new customers. David scoffed. New customers? You chased off the old ones. The bank's foreclosing because of that loan you pushed us into. I shook my head, stunned. You asked me to co-sign. I set conditions to protect us. Liam laughed bitterly. Conditions? You tied Dad's hands, made him jump through hoops for his own business. The accusations piled up, each one twisting reality. My marketing had ruined the brand. My suggestions for modern pastries had alienated their base. My co-signing had trapped them in debt. I tried to counter with facts, profit margins, customer demographics, but they talked over me, their voices a chorus of condemnation. My grandmother, who once snuck me extra cookies, looked at me with disappointment. I never thought you'd destroy our legacy, she said. The room spun. I looked to Chloe, hoping for a flicker of doubt, and for a moment her eyes softened, but she stayed silent. Laura stared at her hands. Mom, I whispered. She shook her head. You should go, Emily, David pointed to the door. You've done enough. You ruined us. Get out. The words hit like a physical blow, each syllable a blade. I scanned the room, searching for one kind face, one ally. There was none. A strange calm settled over me, like the quiet before a storm breaks. I set my folder on the coffee table, the reports no one would read, and walked out. No one called after me. The door clicked shut, and I drove away, tears blurring the Denver skyline, my childhood home fading in the rear view. That night, I didn't just leave a house, I left a role I'd never chosen. If you've ever faced a moment when love turned to betrayal, you know this pain. But you also know the clarity it brings. This is the 4th chapter of my story, where I lost my family but found the courage to choose myself. Stay with me, because what came next was the beginning of everything. Have you ever stood at the edge of everything you've ever known, heart pounding, knowing that one step could change your life forever? That's where I found myself at 27, driving away from Denver, Colorado, the city that had shaped me, scarred me, and finally broken me. My name is Emily Harper, and for years I'd been my family's scapegoat, blamed for every failure, from my father's struggling bakery to my siblings' frustrations. The spring evening when my entire family, parents David and Laura, brother Liam, sister Chloe, and a room full of relatives declared me the ruin of their lives, was the moment I knew I had to leave. Not just their house, but the role they'd forced me into. So, I quietly packed my life, changed my phone number, and headed to Seattle, Washington, chasing a future where I could finally be free. This is the story of that let-me departure from Denver, my first steps in a new city, and the fragile hope that bloomed amid the rain and uncertainty. The night of the family meeting, I drove home through Denver's familiar streets, tears blurring the city lights into halos. My apartment, a small one-bedroom I'd rented to stay close to my family, felt like a stranger's space. I collapsed on the couch. My father's words, "You ruined us. Get out," echoing like a drumbeat in my mind. Sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I paced, replaying a lifetime of blame. The porcelain music box I didn't break at 6. The dance classes I gave up to ease the budget. The Yale scholarship dismissed as a burden. For the first time, I saw the pattern clear, not as my failure, but as their choice. By dawn, I sat at my kitchen table, journal open, and wrote a question I'd never dared ask. What if I leave? Not just tonight, but forever. The thought was terrifying, exhilarating, a spark in the darkness. I called my boss, Rachel, at the digital media startup where I worked, requesting a week's emergency leave for a family crisis. True enough. Take what you need, Emily, she said, her voice warm. And that Seattle office position is still open if you're interested. My breath caught. Seattle, a new city, a new start. Can I let you know soon, I asked. Absolutely, she replied. Take care of yourself. That day, I moved with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I researched what it would take to uproot my life. Breaking my lease required 1 month's rent, a manageable penalty. Seattle's rental market was pricier than Denver's, but my savings could cushion the transition. The hardest decision was my phone number, the thread tying me to my family. Changing it felt like cutting a lifeline, but as I scrolled through old texts, Laura's guilt trips, Liam's accusations, Chloe's demands, I knew it was necessary. I visited my bank to secure my accounts, gathered my birth certificate, Yale diploma, and passport, locking them in a fireproof box. I made lists: what to pack, clothes, my camera, my journal, what to sell, furniture, decor chosen to please my family, what to donate, books, old clothes. Doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Was family, however broken, worth preserving? But I silenced it with action. A call to Dr. Ellis, my therapist, grounded me. You're not running away, she said. You're choosing yourself. That's different. Her words became my mantra as I sold my couch to a young couple, donated boxes to a shelter, and packed my car with what mattered most. The drive to Seattle was 1,300 miles, a journey through mountains and plains that mirrored the upheaval in my heart. Leaving Denver, I passed landmarks that held my history. Harper's Hearth. Its sign faded. The animal shelter where I'd found solace. The library where Laura worked. Each mile felt like shedding a layer of the scapegoat I'd been. By the time I crossed into Washington, rain streaking my windshield, I was trembling not just from fatigue, but from the weight of what I'd done. Seattle greeted me with gray skies and the hum of a city alive with possibility. I'd booked a temporary Airbnb in Fremont, a quirky neighborhood known for its art and coffee shops. The studio was small, with a single bed and a view of a mural-covered alley, but it was mine. Unloading my Boxes Me camera, my journal, a few clothes, I felt a pang of loneliness. I had no family, no friends here, just a job transfer and a 2-week booking. Doubt hit hard. Had I made a mistake? I reached for my phone, then remembered I'd changed my number. The finality sent me spiraling into a panic attack, my first in years. I slid to the floor, back against the wall, struggling to breathe, convinced I'd thrown away my life. But Dr. Ellis's voice echoed. Choose yourself. Slowly I counted my breaths, grounding myself in the present. This wasn't a mistake, it was a beginning. The next morning, I woke to Seattle's drizzle and made a plan. First, I'd set up remote work until the Seattle office opened. Second, I'd find a permanent apartment. Third, I'd build a routine to anchor me. I walked to a nearby coffee shop, Fremont Coffee, its warmth a contrast to the gray outside. Struggling with the Wi-Fi, I caught the eye of the barista, a guy with a sleeve of tattoos and a friendly grin. First time here? He asked, coming over. First time in Seattle, I admitted, my voice shaky. Welcome, I'm Jamie. You'll love it here. He typed in the password, his kindness a small lifeline. I'm Emily, I said. Just moved from Denver. Jamie nodded. Fresh start, huh? Seattle's perfect for that. That 5-minute exchange, so simple, was my first connection in my new city. I returned daily, Jamie's, "Hey, Emily," greeting me like a friend. Work kept me grounded. Rachel arranged weekly video calls, and the Seattle office renovation was on track for a spring opening. Finding an apartment was tougher. Seattle's market was competitive, and without local references, I faced rejections. But I kept searching, walking Fremont streets, drawn to its eclectic vibe. On my 10th day, I found a listing for a studio in Queen Anne, a neighborhood with views of Puget Sound. The exposed brick walls and tall windows felt like a canvas for my new life. I signed the lease, my heart racing with possibility. Moving in with my few possessions, my camera, my journal, a folding chair, highlighted how much I'd left behind. My Denver apartment had been filled with things to impress my family. This space was blank, waiting for me to define it. Standing in the empty room, I felt both free and lost, unsure of who I was without the scapegoat's shadow. Seattle's rhythm began to shape me. Each morning, I walked along Lake Union, the water reflecting the city's resilience. The boats bobbing in the mist reminded me I was navigating uncharted waters too. One evening, I stumbled across a book club flyer at Fremont Coffee. On a whim, I joined, meeting a group of transplants who loved stories as much as I did. Over discussions of novels, I shared bits of my journey, their nods and smiles easing my isolation, my journal filled with new entries. Today, I laughed with strangers. Today, I felt seen. If you've ever left behind a place that hurt you, you know this mix of fear and hope. Seattle was teaching me that starting over isn't just about leaving, it's about discovering who you can become. This is the 5th chapter of my story, where I traded blame for possibility, Denver's wait for Seattle's rain. It's a story of courage, of building a life from scratch, of finding light in the unknown. Stay with me, because what I found in this city was more than a home, it was myself. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror and realized you don't know the person staring back? Not because you've changed, but because you've spent so long being what others expect that you've forgotten who you are? At 27, I, Emily Harper, faced that moment in Seattle, Washington, a city that became my refuge after leaving behind my role as my family's scapegoat in Denver, Colorado. For years, I'd been defined by blame by my father David's accusations, my mother Laura's dismissals, my brother Liam's scorn, and my sister Chloe's silence. I'd chased their love through high school, Yale, and a return to Denver, only to walk away after a devastating family meeting that declared me the ruin of their lives. In Seattle, I wasn't just starting over, I was searching for the Emily I'd buried under years of trying to please others. This is the story of that search of rediscovering my passions, building a home that reflected me, and learning that freedom comes from embracing who you are, not who you're told to be. When I arrived in Seattle, rain-soaked and uncertain, I carried little more than my camera, my journal, and a heart heavy with questions. My temporary Airbnb in Fremont was a blank slate, much like my future. After securing a studio apartment in Queen Anne, with its exposed brick walls and windows framing Puget Sound, I faced a daunting truth. I didn't know what I liked. For so long, my choices, me clothes, my hobbies, my dreams had been shaped to avoid my family's criticism. Standing in my empty apartment, I felt both liberated and paralyzed. What colors did I want on my walls? What music did I love? Who was Emily Harper when no one was watching? My therapist, Dr. Ellis, became my guide through video calls, her voice steady as she framed this moment as an adventure. Think of it as an expedition, she said. You're exploring the landscape of your own desires. There are no wrong answers, only discoveries. Her words sparked a flicker of excitement, a challenge to find myself beyond the scapegoat. I began with small steps, testing the waters of my own preferences. One rainy morning, I wandered into a Seattle market and bought ingredients for vegan Thai curry, drawn to its vibrant spices, something my family would have called too exotic. Cooking in my tiny kitchen, the aroma of lemongrass and chili filling the air, I felt a surge of joy. This was mine, a choice untainted by expectation. I started listening to music I'd never dared play at home, indie folk with soulful lyrics, classical piano that felt like a conversation with my heart. My journal, once a record of pain, became a canvas for possibility. I wrote, "Today, I ate spicy food and loved it. Today, I danced to a song no one else picked. I'm learning who I am." Photography, my passion from Yale, became a lifeline. I'd set aside my camera in Denver, too busy trying to please my family. In Seattle, I dusted it off, capturing the city's textures, the mist over Lake Union, the neon glow of Fremont's coffee shops, the faces of strangers who smiled back. Each photo was a piece of myself reclaimed, a moment where I saw the world through my own lens. One evening, I joined a local photography club, nervous but curious. There, I met Priya, a graphic designer with a warm laugh who loved street photography. "Your work has soul," she told me after I shared a shot of a rain-soaked ferry. Her words echoed. Miss Rivera, my high school debate coach, reminding me I had something worth sharing. I pinned my photos to my apartment walls, their colors blues, greens, soft gold strands forming the space into a reflection of me. Another discovery came through pottery. a hobby I'd never considered. I signed up for a class at a Queen Anne studio, drawn by the idea of creating something imperfect. My first attempt, a lopsided bowl, wobbled on the wheel, but as I shaped the clay, I felt a freedom I'd never known. No one was here to criticize its flaws. No one was here to blame me for trying. When I glazed it a deep ocean blue, inspired by Puget Sound, I held it up, proud of its uneven edges. "This is mine," I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. My journal entry that night read, "I made something today, and it's enough because I say it is." Pottery became a ritual, a way to mold not just clay, but my sense of self. Community began to anchor me. My morning walks along Lake Union led me to a community garden in Fremont, where I volunteered, digging in the soil alongside Elena, a retired botanist with a gentle smile. "Plants don't judge," she said one afternoon, handing me a seedling. "They just grow where they're planted." Her words stayed with me, a reminder that I too could grow here. Elena invited me to her apartment for tea, showing me her pressed flower collection, each bloom a story of resilience. Our conversations, about life and loss and starting over, felt like the family I'd never had. At Fremont Coffee, Jamie, the barista who'd welcomed me on my first day, became a friend. He invited me to a book club, where I met readers who loved stories as much as I did. Over discussions of novels like The Alchemist, I shared snippets of my journey, their empathy weaving a thread of belonging. My journal noted, "I'm not alone anymore. I'm building something new." One evening, I saw a flyer for an open mic night at a Fremont venue. On impulse, I signed up, my heart racing as I wrote a poem about leaving Denver, a raw, unpolished piece about blame and freedom. Standing under the stage lights, my voice shaky at first, I read, "I was their shadow, their fault, their flaw. But in the rain I learned to thaw." The applause, warm and genuine, was a balm to wounds I'd carried for years. A woman in the audience, Lila, approached me afterward. "Your poem hit me hard," she said. "I left a toxic job last year. It's scary but worth it." We talked for an hour, our stories mirroring each other, and I realized Seattle was giving me more than a home, it was giving me a voice. Yet, the past lingered. Some nights I'd wake from dreams of Denver, my family's accusations echoing. I'd sit in my apartment, the Puget Sound lights flickering outside, and write in my journal, "I'm free, but why do I still feel them?" Dr. Ellis helped me navigate these moments. "You're unlearning a lifetime of conditioning," she said. "Be patient with yourself." Slowly, I began to see my apartment not as a hiding place, but as a sanctuary. I hung my pottery, my photos, a woven blanket I'd bought at a market. Each choice was a declaration, "This is who I am. This is what I love." If you've ever had to rediscover yourself after years of being defined by others, you know this journey equal parts terrifying and thrilling. Seattle taught me that finding yourself isn't about erasing the past, but about building a present that honors your truth. My days of being the scapegoat were fading, replaced by moments of joy, creativity, and connection. This is the 6th chapter of my story, where I learned to choose colors, songs, and dreams that were mine alone. Stay with me, because the past wasn't done with me yet, but I was ready to face it on my own terms. Have you ever felt the past reach out? Its voice both familiar and unsettling, tempting you to return to a place you've fought to leave behind? At 27, I, Emily Harper, stood at that crossroads in Seattle, Washington, a city that had become my sanctuary after I walked away from my role as my family's scapegoat in Denver, Colorado. For years, I'd carried the blame for my father David's failures, my mother Laura's frustrations, my brother Liam's resentment, and my sister Chloe's silence. After a devastating family meeting where they declared me the ruin of their lives, I left everything, my childhood home, my old phone number, my desperate need for their approval, and started anew. In Seattle, I was rediscovering myself through pottery, photography, and new friendships. But a month after my move, the past came knocking. Not with apologies, but with demands, accusations, and a pull that tested my newfound strength. This is the story of those messages from a life I'd left behind, the emotions they stirred, and the boundaries I fought to hold. In Seattle's gentle rain, I was building a life that felt like mine. My Queen Anne apartment, with its brick walls and Puget Sound views, was filling with pieces of me blue pottery bowls, Photos of Lake Union, a journal now brimming with hope. My mornings began with walks along the water, my evenings with book club debates or pottery classes, and my heart was learning to trust the kindness of friends like Jamie, the barista, and Elena, the botanist. But the past wasn't silent. I'd changed my phone number to sever ties, using a temporary burner phone for essentials. Yet, a part of me wondered, had my family noticed my absence? Did they care? Against Dr. Ellis's advice, I decided to check my old number before disconnecting it permanently. At a Seattle phone store, I sat in a sterile back room, heart pounding, as the technician pulled up the records. The screen lit up with numbers that stole my breath. 60 missed calls, 30 voicemails, 100 text messages, all from my family, starting the day after I left and growing frantic over weeks. "Would you like to listen?" the technician asked. I nodded, my mouth dry, bracing for the voices I'd tried to forget. The first voicemails were sharp with anger. David's voice boomed. "Emily, this is childish. Call us back now." Laura's tone was tight. "You're making everything worse by disappearing." Liam called me selfish. Chloe, dramatic. I flinched, the familiar sting of blame cutting through my Seattle calm. But as the messages progressed, the tone shifted. Confusion crept in. "Where are you?" Laura asked, her voice cracking. "Your apartment's empty." Liam sounded uncertain. "Did you really leave Denver?" By the final week, desperation took over. David, subdued, said, "We need to talk about the bakery. Things have happened." Laura, crying, pleaded, "I just need to know you're safe." Chloe, who rarely called, left a message that stopped me cold. "It's bad, Emily. Whatever you're mad about, this is bigger. Please." I sat frozen, the technician's question. "Want the text printed?" Barely registering. "Yes," I whispered, clutching the pages like evidence of a life I'd outrun. Back in my apartment, I spread the texts across my kitchen counter. Their words a timeline of my family's unraveling. Early messages echoed the voicemail sanger. Demands, blame. "You can't just walk away," Liam wrote. "You owe us." But later texts revealed chaos. "The bakery's done," Laura wrote. "Bank seizing everything." David mentioned legal trouble. Chloe's final text was a gut punch. "Dad's arrested. We need you, sis." Arrested? My mind raced. I'd co-signed a loan for Harper's Hearth, discovering too late that David had gambled away the funds. Had his recklessness led to fraud? Part of me, the daughter who'd once craved his approval, felt a pang of worry. But another part, hardened by betrayal, felt a flicker of vindication. I wrote in my journal, "They're falling apart, and they still think I'm the answer. Why can't they see I'm not?" Curiosity led me to social media, which I'd deactivated when I left. Logging in, I found posts that filled the gaps. Harper's Hearth had closed 3 weeks after my departure. David faced charges, not just for gambling, but for falsifying loan applications over years. A post from Chloe blamed me, claiming my abandonment after co-signing left them vulnerable. But the comments told another story. Former employees and neighbors noted David's gambling was an open secret, the bakery's troubles predating my involvement. The truth was public, yet my family clung to their narrative. Emily, the destroyer. I closed my laptop, my journal capturing the hollow ache. I should feel free, but it just hurts. Days later, my work phone rang, a Denver number. "Emily Harper?" I answered, professional but wary. Finally, Chloe's voice cut through. "Do you know how many firms I called to find you?" My pulse quickened. "How did you get this number?" "Doesn't matter," she said. "You need to come home. Dad's court date is next week, and the lawyer needs you as a witness. Plus, the bank's asking about that loan you co-signed. No greeting, no apology, just demands." I steadied myself, Dr. Ellis's boundary-setting exercises in mind. "Chloe, I'm not coming back," I said. "What?" she snapped. "This is family." "The same family that said I ruined their lives?" I countered. "That told me to get out?" A pause. "That was Dad's temper," she said. "You know how he is." "I do," I replied. That's why I left. Chloe's tone shifted, cycling through tactics I knew too well. Guilt. You're abandoning us when we're down. Accusation. Your name's on that loan, you're part of this. Threats. Don't think you're untouchable. We know where you work. I gripped the phone, fear mingling with resolve. I didn't cause this, I said. Dad's gambling did. I've spoken to a lawyer. The bank has my statement about his deception. Chloe's voice rose. You're testifying against him? I'm telling the truth, I said. Calm but firm. Something our family never mastered. The call ended with her threats lingering. Your boss might hear some things. I sat at my desk, trembling. But I wasn't the Emily who'd cower. I went to Rachel, my boss, closing her office door. I need to tell you about Denver, I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. For 20 minutes, I shared my story, the bakery's collapse, David's charges, Chloe's threats. Rachel listened, her face kind, but focused. Thank you for trusting me, she said. Your work speaks for itself, Emily. No one's accusations could change that. Relief flooded me, tears threatening. And frankly, she added, anyone who'd threaten their sister's career isn't credible. I left her office lighter, my journal noting. I stood up for myself today. They can't touch me here. That evening, a final text arrived, forwarded from my old number. This isn't over. No name. But the Denver area code was clear. I stared at it, the Puget Sound lights glittering outside, and deleted it without replying. My family's voices angry, desperate, blaming were echoes of a past I'd outgrown. Seattle had given me pottery, photos, friends who saw me. I wrote in my journal, they can't pull me back. I'm choosing me. If you've ever had to silence the past to protect your future, you know this strength. It's not easy, but it's yours. This is the 7th chapter of my story, where I faced my family's pull and chose my own path. Stay with me, because the connections I built next showed me what family could truly mean. Have you ever found a place where you're seen, not for what you do, but for who you are, where laughter comes easy and kindness doesn't come with strings? At 27, I, Emily Harper, discovered that place in Seattle, Washington, after leaving behind my role as my family's scapegoat in Denver, Colorado. For years, I'd been weighed down by blamey father David's accusations. My mother Laura's dismissals, my brother Liam's resentment, my sister Chloe's silence. A devastating family meeting where they cast me as the destroyer of their bakery and lives pushed me to walk away, cutting ties and starting anew. In Seattle, I'd begun to find myself through pottery, photography, and small acts of courage. But a month after my move, when my family's desperate messages tried to pull me back, I held firm, choosing my new life. What came next was a gift I hadn't expected. A chosen family of friends who lifted me up, showing me that connection could heal where blood had hurt. This is the story of those bonds, the people who became my home, and the joy of belonging to something true. In Seattle's misty embrace, I was learning to live for myself. My Queen Anne apartment, with its brick walls and Puget Sound views, was a canvas of my rediscovery blue pottery bowls on the shelves, photos of Lake Union on the walls, a journal filled with dreams instead of doubts. My mornings were spent walking along the water, my evenings with book club friends or pottery classes, each moment a step away from the scapegoat I'd been. But it was the people I met who transformed Seattle from a city into a home. Jamie, the barista at Fremont Coffee, had been my first connection, his warm, "Hey, Emily," greeting me like a friend. One rainy afternoon, he invited me to a cultural festival in Fremont, a vibrant mix of food stalls, live music, and art. "You've got to try the Ethiopian injera," he said, handing me a plate of tangy flatbread and spicy lentils. We wandered the festival with his friends, their laughter infectious, their questions about my photography genuine. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged, not because I'd earned it, but because I was enough. My journal entry that night read, "Today I was just Emily, and it felt like freedom." Elena, the retired botanist from the Fremont Community Garden, became another anchor. Her hands, weathered from years of tending plants, guided mine as we planted lavender and sage. "Soil doesn't judge," she'd say, her eyes crinkling with a smile. "It just asks you to show up." One evening, she invited me to her apartment for a garden potluck. a cozy gathering of volunteers sharing homemade dish tamales, quinoa salad, Elena's rosemary focaccia. As we ate on her balcony, the Seattle skyline sparkling below, I shared a piece of my story leaving Denver, the weight of blame. The group listened, their nods and gentle questions wrapping me in understanding. Elena squeezed my hand. "You're growing here, Emily, just like our garden." I wrote in my journal, "These people don't need me to fix them. They just want me to be." Photography opened another door. At the photography club, I'd met Priya, whose passion for capturing Seattle's street life matched my own. She introduced me to Marcus, a retired photojournalist who mentored the group. Marcus, with his gray beard and sharp eye, saw potential in my work. "Your photos tell stories," he said, studying a shot of a ferry cutting through morning fog. "Keep shooting from the heart." He encouraged me to submit my work to a local gallery, a prospect that thrilled and terrified me. One Saturday, Marcus invited the club to his studio, where we critiqued each other's portfolios over coffee. Sharing my photosimages of Seattle's rain, its people, its quiet moments, I felt vulnerable but alive. Priya's praise, Marcus's constructive feedback, and the group's encouragement were unlike anything I'd known in Denver. My journal noted, "They see my work, not my flaws. I'm learning to trust that." Then there was Luna, my rescue dog, who brought a different kind of connection. I'd visited a Seattle animal shelter, drawn by memories of volunteering in Denver. Luna, a scruffy terrier mix with one floppy ear, chose me, her tail wagging as she pressed her nose into my hand. Adopting her felt like a promise to her, to myself, to build a life of care. Each evening, Luna greeted me with joyful leaps, her warmth filling my apartment. Walking her through Queen Anne's tree-lined streets, I'd talk to her about my day, her attentive eyes making me feel heard. One night, as she curled up beside me, I wrote, "Luna doesn't care about my past. She just loves me now. Maybe I can love myself that way too." A storytelling event in Fremont became a turning point. I'd attended open mic nights, sharing poems about my journey. But this event was different, a night dedicated to stories of reinvention. I signed up, nervous but determined, crafting a narrative about leaving Denver's blame for Seattle's hope. Standing on stage, the spotlight warm, I spoke of the family meeting, the weight of being the scapegoat, and the courage to walk away. "I'm not their villain anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I'm my own hero." The audience's applause, their teary smiles, felt like a collective embrace. Afterward, a woman named Tara approached me. "Your story's mine too," she said, describing her escape from a controlling partner. We exchanged numbers, promising coffee, and I realized my story wasn't just Monet, was a bridge to others. My journal captured the moment. Tonight, I wasn't alone. My words built a connection. These bonds, Jamie's festival invites, Elena's potlucks, Marcus's mentorship, Luna's loyalty, Tara's shared story, were the opposite of my Denver family. Where my parents and siblings demanded I fix their problems, these people asked only for my presence. Where blame had been my family's currency, kindness was Seattle's. Yet, the contrast brought bittersweet moments. Seeing a mother and daughter at a market, laughing over apples, stirred a pang of loss. Father's Day ads triggered memories of gifts criticized as not my thing. Dr. Ellis, in our video sessions, helped me navigate this. "You're grieving the family you wanted," she said. "That's okay. It makes room for the family you're building." I nodded, my journal reflecting. I miss what could have been, but I love what is. One evening, I organized a potluck at the community garden, inspired by Elena. Jamie brought empanadas, Priya a curry, Marcus a tray of brownies, and Elena her focaccia. Luna darted between guests, stealing smiles. As we ate under string lights, the Seattle sky clearing to reveal stars, I felt a warmth I'd never known in Denver. These were my people, not by blood, but by choice. I toasted them, my voice catching. "Thank you for seeing me." Later I wrote, "This is family people who lift you up, not tear you down." If you've ever found connections that feel like home, you know this joy. If you haven't, keep searching, they're out there. Seattle showed me that family isn't defined by obligation, but by love that celebrates you. This is the 8th chapter of my story, where I traded blame for belonging, building a chosen family that healed my heart. Stay with me, because the past wasn't finished, but I was ready to face it with new strength. Have you ever faced someone from your past? Heart racing, unsure if meeting them will heal old wounds or reopen them. At 27, I, Emily Harper, stood at that crossroads in Seattle, Washington, a city that had become my haven after I left behind my role as my family's scapegoat in Denver, Colorado. For years, I'd carried the weight of blame me father David's accusations, my mother Laura's dismissals, my brother Liam's resentment, my sister Chloe's silence. A devastating family meeting, where they branded me the destroyer of their bakery and lives, drove me to cut ties, change my phone number, and start anew. In Seattle, I'd rebuilt myself through pottery, photography, and a chosen family of friends like Jamie, Elena, and Priya. When my family's desperate messages tried to pull me back, I held firm, protecting my peace. But when my mother reached out, asking for a single coffee in Seattle, I faced a choice. Close the door forever or crack it open, just enough to see if healing was possible. This is the story of that cautious reunion, the fragile bridge we built, and the boundaries that kept me whole. 9 months into my Seattle life, I'd found a rhythm that felt like home. My Queen Anne apartment, adorned with my photos and pottery, was a sanctuary. My days were filled with walks along Lake Union, volunteer work at the Fremont Community Garden, and laughter with friends who saw me for me. Luna, my rescue dog, greeted me each evening with boundless joy, her floppy ear a reminder of unconditional love. I'd grown stronger, my journal no longer a record of pain but a map of growth. I'm not their scapegoat. I'm Emily, and I'm enough. Yet, the past lingered in quiet moments. Dreams of Denver's accusations still woke me, and I'd wonder about my family not with longing, but with a mix of grief and curiosity. Dr. Ellis, my therapist, helped me navigate this. Healing doesn't mean erasing the past, she said in a video call. It means deciding what place it holds in your present. Her words were in my mind when an email from Laura arrived, its subject line simple: visiting Seattle. Laura wrote that she'd be in Seattle for a library conference and asked to meet for coffee. Just me, she emphasized. No expectations. My first instinct was to delete it. The memory of her silence during the family meeting still raw. But something stopped me, flicker of hope, or perhaps a need to know if she'd changed. I discussed it with Dr. Ellis, who suggested setting clear boundaries. A 30-minute meeting, a public place, an easy exit. You're in control, she said. I chose Pike Place Market, a bustling neutral ground where I could leave if needed. To prepare, I started meditating, a practice I'd picked up in Seattle to stay grounded. Sitting cross-legged in my apartment, Luna curled beside me. I focused on my breath, visualizing a calm center no one could shake. My journal entry read, "I'm not going back to who I was. I'm meeting her as who I am now." The day before the meeting, I visited a Seattle art gallery, drawn by a painting titled Family Ties. It depicted a tree with branches both broken and blooming, its colors deep blues and vibrant greens mirroring my journey. Standing before it, I reflected on what family meant. In Denver, it had been obligation, blame, a role I couldn't escape. In Seattle, it was Jamie's festival invites, Elena's potlucks, Marcus's mentorship. Could Laura fit into this new definition, or was the gap too wide? I wrote, I don't need her approval anymore, but maybe I need to see her to know I'm free. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early at a Pike Place cafe, choosing a table with a clear path to the door. My hands trembled as I sipped my coffee, the market's hum vendors calling, tourists laughing grounding me. When Laura walked in, I barely recognized her. The polished librarian I'd known was gone, replaced by a woman who looked older, thinner, her gray hair loose, her eyes weary. She spotted me and hesitated, as if unsure I'd welcome her. I didn't stand to hug her, but nodded at the chair across from me. "Hello, Mom," I said, my voice steady but soft. "Emily," she replied, her voice catching as she sat. "You look different, stronger." He nodded. "I am. Thank you for coming." An awkward silence followed as she ordered tea, her fingers twisting her napkin, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. I waited, determined not to fill the quiet with nervous chatter as I once would have. Finally, she spoke. Your father was sentenced last month, she said. 2 years, mostly probation. The bakery's gone. We sold the house to cover debts. I'd heard through my lawyer, who'd managed my co-signed loan liability. I know, I said neutrally. It's been hard. She looked at me searching. We're in an apartment now, smaller, different. I nodded, softening slightly. I'm sorry it's been tough. I meant it. No joy came from their loss, despite everything. She blinked, surprised. You aren't you? Even after how we treated you? I sipped my coffee, choosing my words. I don't wish you pain, but I can't carry it for you anymore. Her hands tightened around her cup. I didn't understand you, Emily. You were always so sensitive, so determined. You took the blame even when it wasn't yours. She paused, her voice dropping. Until you didn't? I leaned forward, my voice quiet but firm. People can only bend so far before they break, Mom, or before they stand up. She met my eyes briefly, then looked away. I wanted to blame you when you left, she admitted. It was easier than facing the truth about your father's gambling, the bakery, my own mistakes. Her honesty, raw and unpolished, caught me off guard. Liam and Chloe still blame you, she continued. It's simpler than admitting we were wrong, but I've had time to think. Too much time. I see now. We did to you what my family did to me. I was the difficult one. I swore I'd never do that to my kids, but I did. It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from her. My journal had prepared me for this possibility. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace. I exhaled, feeling the weight of years shift slightly. What now? I asked. She shrugged, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. I don't know. That's up to you. I just needed to see you're okay. I nodded. I am better than okay. A faint smile crossed her face. You have a light about you. In Denver, you were dimmed. The word struck me, echoing my own reflections. We talked for the remaining minutes, skirting painful topics, finding safer ground. Her conference, my photography. When the 30 minutes ended, I signaled for the check. Would you be open to talking again? She asked, hesitant. Maybe calls to start? I considered, Dr. Ellis's advice in mind. I'd try occasional calls, I said. But I'm building a healthy life here. I can't go back to how things were. She nodded. I understand. We parted with a brief, awkward hug, the market's energy swirling around us. That night, I walked along Lake Union, Luna trotting beside me, and wrote, Today, I saw my mom and didn't lose myself. That's healing. If you've ever faced a past that hurt you, you know this delicate dance honoring your heart while guarding your peace. Seattle taught me that reconciliation is possible, but only with boundaries that protect your light. This is the 9th chapter of my story, where I opened a door, but held my ground. Stay with me, because the final step was sharing my journey with the world. Have you ever looked back at your life and seen not just the pain, but the strength it forged? At 27, I, Emily Harper, stand on the Seattle waterfront, watching ferries glide across Puget Sound, and see a journey that transformed me from my family's scapegoat to a storyteller who lifts others up. In Denver, Colorado, I was blamed for everything: my father David's failing bakery, my mother Laura's frustrations, my brother Liam's resentment, my sister Chloe's silence. A crushing family meeting where they declared me the ruin of their lives, pushed me to leave, cutting ties and rebuilding in Seattle. Here, I rediscovered myself through pottery, photography, and friends like Jamie, Elena, and Priya. When my family's desperate messages and my mother's cautious reunion tested my boundaries, I held firm, choosing peace over obligation. Now, a year after leaving Denver, I'm not just healing, I'm sharing my story to show others they're not alone. This is the final chapter of my journey, where I turned pain into purpose, found my voice, and learned that healing is about choosing yourself every single day. Seattle had become my home, not just in its rain-soaked streets or my Queen Anne apartment, but in the life I'd built. My days were filled with meaning: mornings walking Luna, my rescue dog, along Lake Union, afternoons at the digital media startup's new Seattle office, evenings in the Fremont Community Garden, or at Photography Club with Marcus and Priya. My apartment, once bare, now glowed with my essence blue pottery bowls, photos of Seattle's soul, a woven blanket from Pike Place Market. Luna's joyful leaps greeted me each night, her love a reminder of what I'd gained. My journal, once a record of blame, now overflowed with gratitude. I'm not their shadow anymore. I'm Emily, and I'm whole. But healing, I'd learned, wasn't a destination. It was a process, one that asked me to keep choosing myself, especially when the past whispered doubts. Dr. Ellis, my therapist, framed it beautifully. Your story isn't just yours, Emily. It's a light for others. Her words sparked a new proposal: share my journey and help those trapped in similar shadows. That purpose took shape through volunteering with a Seattle support group for adults from dysfunctional families. I joined as a participant, drawn by stories that echoed mine: people blamed, diminished, unseen. Listening to their pain, I saw my own, but also my strength. After months, I began facilitating sessions, guiding discussions on boundaries, self-worth, and healing. One evening, I met Ethan, a soft-spoken 22-year-old whose story mirrored mine. He described being his roommate's scapegoat, blamed for every mess, every argument. I know I should leave, he said, eyes downcast. But they're my friends. Maybe I'm too sensitive. His words were my own. From a Denver life I'd escaped. I shared my story: the family meeting, the blame, the courage to walk away. You're not too sensitive, I told him. You deserve relationships that lift you up, not tear you down. We talked for hours, and though Ethan wasn't ready to act, his questions and tentative smile felt like a victory. My journal noted, today, I helped someone see their worth. My pain has purpose. Photography became another way to share my story. Marcus, my photography mentor, had pushed me to submit my work to a Fremont gallery. My exhibit, Rain and Renewal, featured images of Seattle ferries and mist, market crowds, Lake Union's dawn glow, each a metaphor for my journey from blame to freedom. The opening night, surrounded by Jamie, Elena, Priya, and book club friends, was a milestone. Strangers approached, drawn to the stories behind my photos. One woman, inspired by a shot of a lone tree in rain, shared her escape from a toxic marriage. Your work speaks, she said. I wrote, my lens isn't just capturing Seattle, it's capturing hope. The exhibit's success led to a blog, where I paired photos with reflections on healing. Comments poured in, people from across the U.S., sharing their scapegoat stories, thanking me for showing they weren't alone. Your words gave me courage, one reader wrote. I realized my voice, once silenced in Denver, was now a beacon. A storytelling event solidified this shift. I'd shared poems at open mic nights, but a Seattle event on Breaking Free called for a full narrative. I crafted a 10-minute story, weaving my Denver pain, Seattle rebirth, and the lessons of boundaries and self-love. Standing on stage, the crowd a sea of faces, I spoke of the family meeting's betrayal, the panic of leaving, the joy of pottery, and Luna's love. I was their scapegoat, I said, voice steady, but I chose to be my own storyteller. The applause was thunderous, but the connections afterward were profound. A young man shared his struggle with a controlling family. A woman spoke of leaving an abusive job. Each story reinforced a truth. Our journeys, though painful, could light the way for others. My journal read, tonight, I wasn't just heard. I was part of something bigger. My blog grew, becoming a platform for other stories. I featured guest posts. Ethan wrote about his decision to move out. Tara about her new life post-divorce. The community we built, virtual but vibrant, was proof that shared pain could foster shared strength. Yet, healing wasn't linear. Some days, guilt over my family crept in. Laura and I spoke monthly, our calls cautious but growing warmer, though she still struggled to fully own her role. David remained unapologetic, Liam distant, Chloe erratic. Dr. Ellis reminded me, you can't change them, but you can choose how much space they take. I chose distance with most, connection with Laura, and peace for myself. My journal reflected, Forgiveness is mine to give, not theirs to demand. One spring evening, I led a support group session, Ethan now a regular, his confidence growing. As we discussed setting boundaries, I shared a new insight. Healing isn't about fixing the past. It's about building a future where you thrive. Ethan nodded, others teared up, and I felt the weight of my purpose. Later, walking along the waterfront, Luna at my side, I watched the ferries, their lights dancing on the water. Seattle had given me more than a home, it had given me a mission. My blog, my photos, my group were threads in a tapestry of hope, woven from pain but vibrant with possibility. If you've ever felt trapped by blame, know this. You can rewrite your story, you can choose yourself, find your voice, and light the way for others. My journey from Denver's scapegoat to Seattle's storyteller taught me that healing is a daily choice, to honor your worth, to build connections that uplift, to share your truth. I'm not at the end. I'm at a beginning, one where I'm free to be Emily, fully and unapologetically. So, I ask you, have you ever had to walk away from a relationship that dimmed your light? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Share your story below, because your voice matters. If this resonated, like, subscribe, and pass it on to someone who needs to know they're not alone. This is the 10th chapter of my story, but it's also your call to rise, to heal, to shine. Thank you for listening, and let's keep telling our stories together. As I stand on the Seattle waterfront, the ferries gliding across Puget Sound under a sky brushed with dawn's soft light, I, Emily Harper, see my life not as a series of wounds, but as a tapestry woven from pain, courage, and rebirth. At 27, I've walked a path that began in Denver, Colorado, where I was my family's scapegoat, carrying the blame for every failure me. Father David's struggling bakery, my mother Laura's frustrations, my brother Liam's resentment, my sister Chloe's silence. For years, I chased their love, believing that if I could be good enough, smart enough, helpful enough, I'd earn a place in their hearts. From a childhood marked by unfair accusations, like being blamed at 6 for a broken music box I didn't touch, to high school triumphs dismissed as burdens, I poured myself into proving my worth. At Yale, I tasted freedom, finding friends like Sarah and Malik who saw me, but family calls dragged me back to blame. Returning to Denver, I took a job at a digital media startup, hoping proximity would heal us, but the pattern persisted. When David's bakery faltered, I offered marketing help, even co-signing a loan, only to discover his gambling had drained it. The final blow came at a family meeting, where my parents, siblings, and relatives united to declare me the ruin of their lives, demanding I leave. That night, I walked away, not just from their house, but from a role I'd never chosen. Leaving Denver was both a leap and a lifeline. I drove 1,300 miles to Seattle, Washington, carrying my camera, my journal, and a heart heavy with questions. In a Fremont Airbnb, then a Queen Anne studio, I faced the fear of starting over. Panic attacks tested me, but I built a plan: remote work with my boss, Rachel, apartment hunting, morning walks along Lake Union. Seattle's rain became my rhythm. Its people, my anchors. Jamie, a barista, welcomed me at Fremont Coffee. Elena, a botanist, shared wisdom at the community garden. Priya and Marcus nurtured my photography. I adopted Luna, a rescue dog whose love taught me trust. Through pottery, vegan cooking, and open mic poetry, I rediscovered my desires, untainted by family expectations. My apartment, filled with blue bowls and photos, became a sanctuary of self. When my family's messages, 60 calls, 30 voicemails, 100 texts demanded my return, I held firm, learning David faced fraud charges for his gambling. Chloe's threats to sabotage my job were neutralized by Rachel's support, and a cautious coffee with Laura opened a fragile door to limited contact, grounded in boundaries. In Seattle, I found a chosen family: Jamie's festival laughter, Elena's potlucks, Marcus's mentorship, Luna's loyalty. Volunteering with a support group, I helped others like Ethan escape scapegoat roles, turning my pain into purpose. My photography exhibit, Rain and Renewal, and blog shared my story, connecting with readers nationwide. Storytelling events amplified my voice, proving that my journey could light the way for others. A year after leaving Denver, I'm not at the end, but at a beginning. Laura and I speak occasionally, her self-awareness growing, Though David remains unapologetic, Liam distant, Chloe erratic, I've forgiven them not for their sake, but for my peace, while holding boundaries that protect my light. Seattle taught me that healing isn't a destination, it's a daily choice to choose myself, to build connections that uplift, to share my truth. What lessons can we draw from this journey, and how can you apply them today? The deepest truth I've learned is that you are not defined by others' blame, but by the courage to claim your worth. In Denver, I believed I was the problem, that love required sacrificing my identity. Seattle showed me that true love, whether from friends, a pet, or yourself, lifts you up, not tears you down. If you're in a relationship, family, or otherwise, where you're constantly blamed or diminished, recognize it's not your fault. You don't have to stay in spaces that dim your light. Start small. Journal your feelings as I did, to see patterns clearly. Seek one persona friend, a teacher, a therapist who sees you. Their belief, like Miss Rivera's or Dr. Ellis's for me, can be a spark. Set boundaries, even if it's just saying no to a toxic conversation. It's not selfish, it's survival. Another lesson is that healing is a process, not a fix. Leaving Denver didn't erase my pain, it gave me space to face it. In Seattle, I grieved the family I wanted while building one I needed. If you're healing from a painful past, be patient. Try new things: cooking, art, volunteering to discover what brings you joy. I found myself in pottery's imperfections, photography's lens, Luna's wagging tail. Small acts, like my Lake Union walks, can ground you. Connect with others who've walked similar paths, as I did with Tara and Ethan. Their stories remind you you're not alone. Share your own, whether in a journal, a blog, or a conversation. Your voice, like mine at storytelling events, can inspire others. Finally, purpose can rise from pain. My scapegoat role, once a burden, became a gift when I used it to help others. You don't need a grand platform, a kind word, a shared story, a listening ear can change someone's day. Volunteer, mentor, or simply be present for someone struggling. Your experiences, however painful, hold wisdom. Today, ask yourself, where am I giving too much to those who take? What small step can I take to choose myself? Who can I lift up with my story? My journey from Denver's blame to Seattle's light taught me that you can rewrite your narrative, not by erasing the past, but by building a future where you shine. So, I leave you with this. You are enough, just as you are. If you're carrying blame that isn't yours, if you're longing for love that doesn't hurt, know that you have the power to walk away, to heal, to tell your story. Share your experiences below your struggles, your triumphs, your steps toward freedom. Let's build a community where no one feels alone. Like, subscribe, and pass this story to someone who needs to hear they're not their family's scapegoat, but their own hero. Thank you for joining me on this journey, from Denver's shadows to Seattle's dawn. Your story matters, and I can't wait to hear it.